Welcome to this Epic Life podcast, where we explore the connection between building a conscious life and building a conscious business. We also break down 3 powerful permissions with our guests. These are the permission to chill or relax, the permission to feel all the feels or embrace our full humanity, and finally, the permission to glow in the dark. Interpret that however you wish. I am your host, Christopher Carter. You may call me KC. I'm a coach for founders and executives and meditation teacher for organizations. Episode 3 on deck. Today's episode is a must for every passionate people person or company culture designer. Deb Josephs is a chief people officer who has helped shepherd massive business and organizational growth over her 25-plus year career. Just a couple of months into her new role with NCC Media, we sat down for a candid conversation on leading culture change, ways to elevate emotional intelligence, also known as EQ, and how to properly align compensation and manager development to drive business success. Deb is one of 4 female executives on NCC's 8-person leadership team, which has recently been redesigned by their new CEO, Nicolle Pangis. We also spend time on diversity and inclusion and how to best support organizations as an outside coach or consultant. Deb is one of those people who drops so much wisdom, I always wish I could record our conversations to benefit other leaders. Today is your lucky day. It's finally happening. Her experience is vast and her strategies are proven, practical, and actionable. A little bit more about Deb. As I mentioned, she's currently the Chief People Officer for NCC Media, which is a privately held cable TV advertising firm headquartered in New York City with 600 employees. She most recently held the same role with IAC Applications and previously led the HR people function at Excelate, who were acquired by Nielsen, and DoubleClick, who were acquired by Google. She has just about seen it all in her HR career, an IPO, acquisitions by big brands, as I mentioned, along with plenty of dysfunction, failures, and straight-up implosions. Deb distills 25 years of partnering with CEOs and founders down to 5 key focus areas for getting the best people in the right roles and creating high EQ environments that promote constant growth. You could read more about her 5 key focus areas in her bio in the show notes, but for right now, let's hop on over to a very far-reaching and deep-diving look into organizational design and company culture development with my good friend. I'm so excited to share this conversation with all of you, with Deb Josephs. It's awesome to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, KC. It's awesome to be here.
We're in the Chrysler Building in Midtown Manhattan. Is this where we are?
Midtown Manhattan, right next door to Grand Central. Chrysler Building is on Lex, and we actually expanded all the way over to the 3rd Avenue building that's adjacent. We broke through to the next building over.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of growth, a lot of needs for more seats.
We always kick off the podcast with the 3 permissions, which I think give us access to our highest expression. And you could interpret them however you wish. There's no right or wrong answer here. The 3 permissions are the permission to chill or find stillness. We've talked about that before. Permission to feel all the feels, access to our full humanity, and permission to glow in the dark. You could interpret that however you wish. Do any of these resonate with you today? And or what do the permissions to chill, feel all the feels, or glow in the dark mean to you?
I love how you smirked, for folks who can't see, when you said permission to chill, and we've talked about that.
It's just because you're a New Yorker to the core.
No, it's not. This is Casey's multiple attempts to get me to meditate. Failed attempts.
Wait, did you was that just an invitation to meditate right now? You want to take a couple minutes and
I would love
in?
to, but we really don't have time.
Okay, all right, cool.
That's a terrible answer. I'm sorry. And we jest because I know the value and the importance of chill, and I do it in different ways, and always have appreciated your encouragement along those fronts. So that's good. So permission to chill really is balance, finding, focus on not just one thing, really being able to give the attention that's needed to the kid or to your own health, to the sport, whatever it is. It's chill and not get so intense. And I use this saying recently quite a bit. Things won't always be this way. For me, being chill means remembering that. It won't always feel this way. And that's okay.
It's interesting because that has been my awareness of you and your leadership style over the years, because as a head of people, and we'll get into that and the demands of that job, it's so fast moving and so relentless, and it's kind of issue after issue sometimes. But your ability to be fully present, or at least to appear fully present with me when we speak, is really admirable. And I think that has to have some sort of permission to chill component, to just be with what is versus oh man, another thing. Because if you get into that game, it'll be exhausting, right?
Yeah. Do you want to go through all three or just one?
Oh, yeah. I'd love to. Yeah.
How does how much time you have.
What do you think about, well, we're going to talk about emotional intelligence, because I think you're one of my sheroes when it comes to emotional intelligence.
Oh, thank you.
Not only in how you employ it with yourself, but how you encourage and develop it in other leaders, specifically male leaders. Mm-hmm. I think that's an interesting agenda, and so important right now. So yeah, what do you think of permission to feel all the feels, or glow in the dark?
Backing up to permission to feel, that's EQ, right? That's I used to fight it. If someone said to me, "You're so sensitive," I would take that as an insult. And now I take that as a compliment, because I'm sensitive to everything around me. And that means feeling the low, the real low. And that gives me permission to feel the real high. And it's not bipolar and out of context. It's not crazy. It's experiencing exactly what's going on instead of with a dulled approach. And that can be unfortunate. The color in your life is feeling the feel. And that makes it interesting.
It makes me think of how you use that higher level of awareness. Maybe it's emotional sensitivity, or just like the full kind of state of the environment around you, to really understand what's going on with people. Because there's what's coming out of their mouth, but you're often hearing or seeing or experiencing something different, and you try to get to the bottom of that.
Absolutely. What are they really saying? That's exactly what it's about. It made me think of a conversation I had with our good dear mutual friend, Jonathan Fields.
Yeah.
Where I was going through a really difficult transition through an employment situation. John, can you come have lunch with me? And he said during lunch, what is it you could get up and teach, right? What's your thing, if you wanted to or if you needed to? And it took me quite a while to synthesize and figure out what that was, because I probably could teach a bunch of things. I wasn't sure what it was as my real commodity. And my commodity is the EQ. My commodity is the ability to read people.
Right.
Ability to really get behind the words they're saying, into the meaning of what they're saying and the emotion of what they're saying. And I don't know how you sell that. I was kind of partially born with it. You've alluded a couple times already to how I teach other people to do that.
Yeah.
Through coaching, through advice. So somehow I managed to do it. But I don't know that everyone is on the same level of ability to attain the EQ. There's a continuum. There are always going to be people who are lower on the scale and higher on the scale.
And there's no limit to how much we can develop it in ourselves. We always tend to notice more in retrospect, like, oh, that's what they were feeling.
Yeah.
And you have a teenage daughter, right?
I do.
That's like the perfect learning
Absolutely.
grounds.
Yeah. Many, many years ago, I read an article, which I've never been able to find since. And I think it was called the U principle, the letter U, not Y-O-U. It was getting leaders and managers to recognize that every interaction is not about them. It's about where that person is coming from, where their staff is coming from. So to become a better leader and manager, make a U-turn, turn it around, and understand where your staff is coming from, where your colleague, where your peer is coming from. And you have to remind yourself of that every single day as a parent, because you gave birth to this child. How can this possibly not be about you?
Oh my gosh.
When they're screaming and yelling at you.
I'm butting up against this so hard right now in my parenting. Yeah.
All my friends who have teenagers, and we're all going through this together.
How dare you do this to me? And you hear your parents' words come out of your mouth. You're like,
be quiet.
Recall the sender.
Right, go to your room. No, wait, don't say that. It's more, you're going through all this stuff in your life, and I've been there. I've done that. I get it. And it's horrifying for a kid, all the hormones and all of the social pressure, which is nothing like what we had to go through. So much worse now for these kids. So I think of that in implementing the U principle.
Yeah, I recently sent a meme to my daughter as a joke after we had a fight and we kind of came back together. She's 14 now. This meme totally reminds me of you, Deb. It's a woman holding 2 toilet paper rolls over her eyes like binoculars, and it says, "These special goggles allow me to see through your bullshit."
Perfect.
Yeah. And
I love it.
we've known each other 5 years now. We met at camp.
Yep.
I don't know that we would have just crossed paths in the corporate world, but to meet in that kind of environment, and we'll talk about camp a little bit later, Camp Good Life Project, to meet in that environment and then to get on video calls together, I was immediately present to how you scan at a lot of different levels, like somebody who's been coaching for a while. Like I'm trained as an ontological coach. We look at the being of people, but you have this acceptance of people, but you also have, to put people at ease, but you also have this, let's get to it, and what are we here to talk about? But it's a really good balance, and it's something that I think I've learned from you in some way just by working with you.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, well, there's a legitimate fear of not to try to put one by you, but then there's also
oh yeah, we've tried that together. Yeah,
I just appreciate the efficiency that brings to the communication, but also the realness. Like let's get to the real, because again, your job is very transactional in that way. Like have to get through a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your job.
Yeah. Let's.
So you have a new chief people officer position. What is a chief people officer, and do you think of your role any differently than a head of human resources?
I'm just going to harp on the word job, right? I don't think what I do is a job. I think what I do is be myself. And that means bringing to the table the unwavering attention to humans at work, whether that's the desk they sit at, where it's situated and how it looks, all the way through to their obvious career development or lack of career development and their interactions with other people and communications. And so every human behavior at work is under my umbrella. The EQ I bring to the table helps me pay attention to those things. Now, it just so happens that through my career, I've developed programs that we can put in place and processes that we can put in place that set people up for success in those situations, such as giving them the ability to create goals or KPIs or OKRs, and understand how those fit in with the bigger picture, so that when they behave and how they behave fits in full transparency to the whole organization and how their job matters.
Can you remind me what OKRs means?
Objectives and key results.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry for all the acronyms. We're, corporate speak over here.
Mm-hmm.
There are many things we can put in place to make these things hum a little better. Without them, though, it's not the wild, wild west. People tend to, respect each other. And that's so interesting because I've learned that coming here.
Mm-hmm.
NCC Media has never had a chief people officer, right, or a head of HR that reports to a CEO, and never had any formal management training, never had performance management in a formal way, never had goal setting, except people get sales goals, never had their culture spelled out or defined or synthesized for them, never had transparent compensation programs, never had a recruiting function. They've been here almost 30 years.
And they're how big of a business?
And we're 600 employees.
Yeah.
And we're privately held, so I can't disclose our numbers necessarily, but they're big, let's say, surprisingly big. And yet you walk the halls and people are authentically, genuinely nice. Some been here 15, 20 plus years, and they are so excited you're here. I had to get up and give an all hands in my third week in front of 600 people.
And you're how far into your job right now?
This is the end of month 2.
Yeah.
I just finishing month 2. I stood up in front of 600 people all across the nation on video, and on stage here I am presenting that was the first question. What is a chief people officer that I had to answer? And I dove into not necessarily this rhetoric, but a little bit around, some of the structure and how I think about HR. And by the way, chief people officer is really the same as the head of HR. I'm going to digress for a second, because a head of HR in traditional organizations had been thought of as the person who ran payroll and benefits and was administrative. Many of us who wanted to step out of that mold and offer more employee-oriented programs that helped culture and attract and retain employees, which is our ultimate goal, tried to change the name so that it didn't sync to someone who just ran payroll and benefits. We were trying to erase that. So the name change is really to try to reinvent.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily a rebrand as much as it is kind of an evolution, because human resources organizations are starting to call themselves talent and development. Like it's all part of the similar
Absolutely, yeah.
kind of movement.
Chief talent officer, I've heard, but then CTO is most commonly the chief technology officer. So It's just a name.
What I love about including people, is your team called People Ops here? Did you change the name of the team too? Yeah. So you had a people operations team at your last business.
Yeah.
What I love about it, it seems to be truly in service of the people and their experience versus that kind of policing function of traditional HR of like, oh, you made the report. I came from the HR side too, and I always remember that was kind of a thing. Like once you go over to that side, people are like, better not misbehave around.
Right, the police.
Yeah.
Right, we're the police, we're the rule makers, and I can't stand rules. I'm like, well, let's just break them all and figure it out. But when I got here, the path was laid out for me. We had a new CEO that came in last May who pretty much disrupted this organization completely. Said, oh, well, I want to put together, so forward thinking and just sort of should be the chief people officer. Really, that's who she is. She's the chief people officer. Diversity, inclusion, culture, all about culture. Let's put our values out there and talk about them. Let's buy a new space because this one's getting old and we are moving in the summer, and really saying all those things, and announced to the company months before I got here, I'm hiring a chief people officer. And previously, the role, HR, had reported up to finance, so it was just an administrative function. My coming in meant you've got a CEO who views the people as importantly as the money.
I'm kind of just got chills because we talked about this about a year ago when we were talking about your philosophy around how CPO, Chief People Officer, relates to the CEO and the CFO. So exactly. I want to get into that because I feel like you manifested exactly what we were talking about. And I had to acknowledge how excited I am for you to be partnering with another powerful female leader.
One of the primary reasons I joined this company.
Yeah.
And Nicolle Pangis comes out of advertising industry with amazing experience and passion and super smarts. And quick sidebar story, I get contacted on LinkedIn quite a bit for employment opportunities. And I had been working, at IAC.
That's just the burden of being Deb, though. That's your cross to bear, Deb. You're infinitely hireable.
I am so hireable. But, I'm picky. So I wasn't just looking to leave either, right? But I wanted, if something came along. But this thing came in my inbox from a headhunter, titled NCC Media, and I ignored it. I'm not even saying I kind of ignored it. I read the title and ignored it because I'd never heard of the company.
What was your bias? Just didn't hear of the company?
I didn't know the company. If I'm going somewhere, I'm going to work for a brand, people. I'm not going to, I want to be bigger and better, whatever it is. Anyway, so 3 days later after that in mail on LinkedIn, I run into a super dear friend of mine who's in this industry. We've been friends 20 plus years. And she ran up to me, and she's been at the same company, which is odd in this industry, but she's been at the same company 25 years. And she said, I think I'm going to leave. I want to go work for Nicolle Pangis. And I was like, okay, good for you. Who's that? I had no idea. And she said, NCC Media, and something in the back of my head snapped. And I was like, where? We started talking, and she told me about Nicolle. I mean, one of my isms, right?
Yeah.
People don't leave a company. They leave their boss. I joined this company because of the boss. So that was really what it was about. And I did my homework on her. I found someone who also works here who took the job because Nicolle called him up and said, hey, Mark, do you want to come work for me at NCC Media? And he said, yeah, sure. Oh, by the way, what's the job? So it just spoke volumes. I came in, I met with the whole team. I felt just the incredible EQ vibe that she brought to the table. She and I are in lockstep. We had several meetings, dinner, and broke bread together, and just really feel as though I found somebody who values the chief people officer as they do the chief financial officer. And she just gets it. And it's given me the authority, the autonomy, the ability to do what I need to do here. I feel so trusted. I feel so honored to be able to make such a difference in a company that can only get better. Look how great they are and how much greater they'll be with what I'm passionate about, bringing all these things to the table. So it's a funny little story when I got here, because Nicolle had built up the role for so long and finally announced it. In my first 2 weeks, I was doing meet and greets, right? Meeting with key people, key leaders, managers in the company, trying to just get a flavor for who's who and what's what and the culture. And all these people would come into my office, literally where you're sitting, Casey, and say to me, we're so glad you're here. And I'm like, I haven't done anything yet. And what's your expectation? Because, what am I in for?
Right.
And they're like, I don't know. They have no idea what they don't know, but it's like falling off the floor. I have nowhere to go but up.
What do you think their excitement was? All the modernization and evolution that their new CEO was kind of ushering in, and you're part of that? Was it the support of the people function? What do you think they were speaking to?
I think it's the path that Nicolle laid out. of the diversity and culture and programs that she already introduced. Little things like working from home a couple days a week here and there. Like the first thing she did was come in and say, stop dressing up everybody, right? It was like a suits organization from what I gather, and dress comfortably, be yourself with, respect and reason, be yourself. And people were like, wow, I didn't know I could do that. I mean, really old school company. And I come in, and that's where I come from. I come from tech. I don't own anything but jeans. I come from,
DoubleClick and Xlate.
Right. All these brands where you're dealing with a lot of millennials at work. This is not that place. So I naturally have this ability to carry out her messaging. So they're excited because they love what she gave them a glimpse into. Now I get to carry out and more.
Let's make sure we touch on your philosophy of culture and HR and how you balance out the business side. I think it's really interesting that prior to you, HR was kind of like an afterthought that just rolled up to finance. And then you have what you have now.
The true mission for me is to grow the business. Culture isn't just bagels and pizza and ping pong tables. That's what a lot of people think it is. And certainly when you're competing for tech talent in today's economy, it's highly competitive. The war for talent's crazy. If an engineer has an option to go to a cute startup-y tech company with all the bells and whistles and snacks all over the place, and an NCC who has nothing, which isn't true, but if we had nothing, they're not going to view us as somewhere where they're going to fit in and want to work. So we're not going to win in that situation. That's what they think they mean when they talk about culture. That's a part of it. That's more what I call workspace. Culture to me is the collective personality of a company. It's when someone says, would you describe the culture here? I'm not going to describe the ping pong table and the snacks. I'm going to describe how people treat each other, how people would talk to one another. And that's with authenticity and with humility and with genuine kindness. You spend more time with the people in your office than you do with your own family. So don't you want to spend time with people you like and you want to hang out with? And if, hey, well, my best friend's somebody I really love to hang out with, right? I'm going to go and grab a movie with that person. I know I can call them in a pinch. They're reliable if I need to be picked up from the airport. Like, my best friend's all that, and I can really show my true colors with that person, just pour out my heart if I need to, trust them with everything. Wouldn't you love to describe your company that way? That's culture.
Yeah. Just before we started rolling, you said you came in here really hitting the ground running fast about, rethinking comp, and you mentioned the key performance indicators, objective results. Can you speak about how those tie into total motivation? Because I know you and I are total geeks about this. The Lindsay McGregor book, Prime to Perform.
I already introduced it here.
Oh, you did?
Oh,
wow. Day one?
Day one. Week 3, when I was on stage at the All Hands, I put a slide up. And I talked about total motivation. I'm so bought into that. It's incredible. And TOMO, total motivation, what you taught me and introduced me to originally isn't a metric. It's for us. It's not, or for me anyway. It's not a metric. It's not something by which I'm going to implement a process and you've got to follow this. To me, it's a lens. It's almost the U principle. It's taking the U principle and being able to quantify it, meaning, now I can say to my employee, getting inside their head, what motivates you? And those 3 things that, the primary drivers play, potential and purpose. I talked about that on stage, and people came up to me after and they were like, I love that. That just resonates for me.
It's kind of representative of that evolution in business from the old carrot and sticks motivators, the lower side, inertia, emotional pressure,
economics,
financial pressure, to move it up into purpose, play, potential, like the ones that are winning the war, like the cultures that are getting a lot of notoriety, Nordstrom, Southwest, these companies have really harnessed that, and and their people are truly playful. Yeah. It's like that experience of coming to work, am I working or am I playing?
Yeah, loving what you do. And I check myself on that personally all the time. I love what I do, which is why I feel like I'm good at it. I know why I'm doing it. I know where I'm going with it. I've got all that Matomo. And I just sort of help others see it too. And that's a big part of this role. I mean, it's not tangible for a lot of people who are used to, well, how am I going to get paid on commissions off of Tomo? Right?
Yeah,
that's what they really
sure,
want to know.
Right.
But you can help them. So one of the things we did is implemented for all salespeople are behaviors. Mm-hmm. So they've been paid to date based on how they make sales, right? Revenue generation. And this year we're going into 2019. I just walk in the door and set this new methodology of saying, well, now 10% of your comp is actually going to be paid based on how you behave and how you demonstrate our values.
Yeah.
So here's the definition of our values. Here are the behaviors that define exactly what it means to be simple and to be diverse and to help people grow. Some of our basic values. And this is what it means. And guess what? You'll be paid on if you show those or not. And now you hit salespeople in their pocket.
Well, what I remember from Prime to Perform is that there's so much correlation between high TOMO and creating a much better customer experience. So if you're creating a great customer experience, it makes sense that it, of course, drive the business. And if you want proof of this, fly United Airlines domestically versus Southwest Airlines domestically.
Oh, no kidding.
It's just, what do you look forward to? What's actually easy versus the, wow, I'm being oppressed for spending my money here. And it's not just a judgment. It happens to be a fact of this week from me traveling. But I love that you're weaving that into the compensation of salespeople, because I think it's another level of motivation for them and also permission to be themselves, right? Like, nobody takes a job so they could be a hard driving, pushy salesperson.
Yeah, yeah. You know, in our business too, accounts move and everything. It also gives salespeople an opportunity. You know, the way I describe it is both sides of this coin, right? One is you've got the salesperson whose accounts moved off and their commissions are penalized as a result, but their high leadership, their high TOMO, they demonstrate these great behaviors. They're still going to get comp. There's an opportunity. On the flip side, you've got those people who are really not nice to play in the sandbox. They don't play nicely.
Are you talking about New Yorkers or
No,
just...
I'm talking about salespeople in general.
Yeah.
Who, you know, they get the sale. They make the money.
Right.
But they're just not
high EQ.
They're not fun to be around.
Driving,
right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be kind here. They're going to get dinged. That shouldn't be accepted. And other people see that. So I feel passionate about this approach, and it's been embraced day one out of the gate coming here.
Yeah.
Great leadership in sales here. They're just high EQ folks, super high EQ.
I love that you are making that book and that kind of philosophy a part of things so early on, because it is so sticky, and I think that's where things are heading. What were some of the either inflection points or any particular jobs in your past career which shaped your thinking around your role as head of people? Because I have it that you also absorb a lot of stuff outside the corporate sphere, like we met at Camp Good Life Project. So I know you're always absorbing stuff, but what inside your corporate career really shaped your thinking as head of people?
A lot of interesting mentors, managers, leaders who guided me early on, I would say gave shape to my career in good ways and bad, right? So shaped me what not to do and shaped me what to aspire to. And I've been lucky in having great mentors. If there were an event to call out, I don't know that I could, but people certainly. A certain manager who taught me, I don't want you to just know these folks' jobs. I want you to know about their lives and the business. You got to know what we do and how we make money, because how can you help them? I remember sitting down with one manager, this was in banking years ago, and understanding his personal situation and new kids at home, young kids at home. Well, that in business translate to, all right, well, this isn't someone who you transfer for an international opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. And because I'm always thinking about succession and growth and people's career paths. And that's, that would be limiting for someone in that situation. It taught me to be mindful of those things, that this particular manager. And I also think what shaped me immensely was while I was in business school, I was a assistant manager at a Gap.
Nice.
Across the street from where I'm sitting today.
What did they used to call it on Saturday Night Live? Was it cinching the pants? Do you remember that skit?
Goodness.
They're like, did you cinch the pants?
I don't remember that one, but yikes. But being trained by the Gap on how to be a manager, the actual managing of other people gave me then the tools to coach others to manage, because I do a lot of that, right? I spend a lot of my time coaching people on how to communicate to their teams, how to motivate them more, how to manage poor performance, which is more common, unfortunately, but those sort of things, and how to get the best out of people. Those were pretty defining, I think.
I'm glad you brought up managers, because I know this is always kind of almost a single point of focus for you for early impact and high impact. When you come into a new job like this 2 months in, how are you already thinking about, and I'm sure you're doing a lot of the observations still, but how do you think about those quick wins in driving certain manager behaviors, and what are those key behaviors that you think are linchpins for making them successful long term?
Yeah, we're doing a few things already. One is a very methodical assessment, like a SWOT analysis of each department head's team. So sitting down with that department head and saying, where are your strengths and weaknesses on two axes, leadership and business results? And here's how we're defining leadership. It's our values. And here's, you know your business results. So where would you plot that person? It's a 9-box, some people call it, right? Mm-hmm. So very carefully going through name by name, understanding the strengths and weaknesses on each of the teams, and then helping those managers figure out what they're going to do. How is this the right team to get you to the next level? So questioning and getting those managers to understand how much better they could be or how much more productive they could be if they had the right people on their team. So that's a key thing we've already kicked off here. I also did an engagement survey week 2. How can I recommend changes or create programs if I don't know what everybody wants me to do? And the results didn't come back in any surprising way, but give me guidance and structure around what programs to focus on first, which is great. And there's some real talent too that in the organization that's helping me. People are at my door almost every day saying, I know you just got here, but if there's any help you need putting together sales training, we really need this.
So super engaged.
Super engaged, in addition to their day job, to really help out with diversity programs. There's a women leadership program. There's, Nicole's involved in a lot of these things. So it's a lot of momentum already. And now I'm trying to rope it into a structured way so it's an organized way. Now I'm building a new team, adding to the existing team to really focus on those things. So focus on learning development, getting recruiting right, and diversity in the culture. Those things then we can systematically, in an organized way, move forward and enhance.
One of the things I loved about what you shared on the axes between business performance and leadership was that what I heard was you're focusing on teaching people to lead other people versus manage the people, but to manage the business performance of those people. That separation, I think, is pretty key because, like you said, when we want to quit bad managers, it's because we're being micromanaged, treated as a resource and not a person. It's cool to hear all these dots connect for you so early on when you're making that impact.
Yeah, I'll be perfectly frank. I'm a little overwhelmed with it all, right?
Yeah, it's a lot.
And there's so much to do. I keep saying to the folks around me, keep me focused. Rome wasn't built in a day. My first priority became the compensation programs. I have spent the last 2 months really mostly focusing on, are people paid right and fairly, whether that's gender or geography, whatever that looks like, a laser focus on that. And it's actually helped me know who's who and what they do.
Yeah.
I've gotten acclimated to the company, and it's funny, I had a meeting with finance last night, and they kept mentioning names. Now, what about this person, and I knew every single name out of 600, and it's only been 2 months. But I'm familiar with all these names and these people. It was the best intro, but it's setting the foundation, because at the core of everything we do in HR and the people function, comp is the most important. And you don't think of it, but you evaluate someone based on their worth to the company. So if you think they're overpaid for the contribution they're making, you're making a judgment about compensation.
Yes.
Subconsciously.
Right. And that affects how they're treated and their communication with, right. So-and-so doesn't know how well they have it, or...
That's right. That's right. And if there's a perceived inequity, you're creating a stir. Don't think people don't talk to each other. Yeah. Everybody tells each other.
Or just feel that subconsciously. Yeah.
Absolutely. If they feel like there's something unfair, that will be toxic in the organization. So solving at the most foundational level in terms of comp and being transparent. And that's, I held 4 comp sessions or performance management sessions when I got here. How I think about comp, the philosophy I have, and how comp is decided in the most transparent way possible, which hadn't existed before here.
I think of what you do now, kind of, especially in this early stage of your time here, as kind of an organizational architect, to come in and create the foundation that'll actually support what you want to accomplish for how many ever years it goes for. It doesn't sound fun to tackle that out of the gate whatsoever. Yeah. And it sounds like it's really illuminating, and just start flat, start clean.
Yeah. One thing we haven't talked about yet, why now here at NCC? What's changed? What drew me in was an opportunity. We are a traditional linear TV spot cable advertising company, right? We place TV advertising. That couldn't be more simple. And we've been doing it 25, 30 years. And now we have an opportunity to obtain data to help make that advertising more relevant and create a data and technology organization that will fuel our advertising. It's not been done before in the way that we're able to do it. Cole coming in, she has a tech background as well as, ad tech background. This is the impetus for change here. So this culture will change. There'll be a shift. Granted, half of our organization are still traditional sales folks from a linear TV perspective, digital and local and linear, and national as well. And yet the other half are evolving into more technologists, data scientists, and those two cultures are very different. So my role is also blending cultures and enhancing the company so it accommodates both of those mindsets, very different mindsets.
And I'm sure there's a ton of change management that goes in there because it's everything is speeding up. You have traditional people intimidated by the amount of tech or change. And
I would think that would be a point of resistance here. And yet in a weird way, everyone's like, can't wait. Bring it on.
The energy around it feels like a really exciting opportunity. Yeah. So I came from the TV advertising side, and even 10, 15 years ago, people were like, TV's dead, TV's dead, TV's dead. So I had a career in digital advertising, and everyone's like, online's a new thing, but it was still a fraction of the budgets.
Still like 10%, maybe it's 15 now.
Exactly. And it seemed like a lot of complex, hard-ass work for way less of the piece of the pie. So it's really powerful to hear that TV is in a place now to go back and kind of retrofit programmatic advertising, technology, all this stuff. It's exciting. I have a love-hate thing with advertising. My mom worked for the newspaper growing up. And so sometimes I think when I worked in advertising, I'm like, well, are we just putting noise into the world or whatever? But to make something programmatically targeted is much more kind to the user because they're actually in the market for something that they need versus being barraged with crap they don't.
I know.
So there are noble qualities to making things programmatic versus like a blanket thing like, oh, you need more of this or you need more of that.
Yeah, when I worked at Excelate, I learned about the ability to turn off your cookies, right, on your computer. And so that you wouldn't get all these advertisements, but the truth is you'd get more that were not relevant.
Exactly.
You'd rather leave it on. And it's not identifiable. It would benefit you. And so when you sit there going, why did I just get an advertisement on my screen for fry boots when I was searching for those 5 minutes ago? Well, guess what? Thank you. Now those are the ones I want, whatever it is.
Right. And I just scroll your Instagram feed to see how well they know you. Yeah. Some of my work with HR teams is around supporting HR people because I feel sometimes HR people are confronted with a lot of either heavy situations or, emotional things with people. How do you think about supporting your team that supports so many other people?
I have really strong relationships with my team that are incredibly transparent. The way I think of the HR team is a cocoon, and we have to be incredibly honest with each other because we're a closed circle. Mm-hmm. And if we can't support each other when things are rough out there, we're not going to be our best selves to the organization. And so what gets talked about in HR stays in HR kind of thing. And it's a trust circle so that we can be strong for everybody else. I advise my folks, make sure you have your strong external networks. That's what I have to do. I go outside for strength from my friends, and I have incredible colleagues in the same space. And that's so that we can be better at our jobs because every day you got to come in with a smile on your face because it's not about you.
Well, it brings up a couple things. A lot of my listeners are either executives or founders with small teams. I have my own little tiny team. There's something to reconcile there between being transparent with your people, but also maintaining the respectable distance in some way or elevation, whatever that is. How do you think about that when it comes to, in HR circles, I've heard it referred to as game face?
Meaning don't always be friends and go drink beers every night with your teammates because you're the boss?
Yeah, maybe some of that. Or
now I know I shouldn't do that. Okay, I got you.
Or what it's like to be an HR person in charge of, like, say, a sales event where it's all open bar clients and salespeople. Like, how do you think about that balance point?
It's hard. I train myself to sip one drink for the whole night. I don't let my guard down at all. Holiday parties, sales events.
So to be of the people, but not in the people.
Kind of fake it.
Yeah, because you're kind of there holding the container for it to be safe and to be open and
I'm a role
respectable.
Model.
Isn't this scary that we're this much of adults now?
I am an adult. I'm an adult. I don't mind.
Yeah.
but I'm an adult. I think back though to, early in my career when I was invited out with like the credit trainee group at the bank, and I so desperately wanted to be, because they were my peers in the world. They were all out of college at the same time, but I'm the HR person.
Oh, right.
I'm held to a different standard.
Yeah.
And that's a tough one. That's a tough one. There's also something though about being an HR person that can be trusted. And if you're going to go off the rails as the HR person, no one's coming to you with their issues.
Oh, right.
Right. So I'm not holier than thou. I'm authentic, but I want them to trust me. I don't want them to think that I'm passing around secrets on them or a little bit had too much to drink and giving away the kitchen sink or whatever it is. I'm held to a different standard because I want to be trusted. Maybe that's my moral compass talking. And at the same time, be authentic and open and personable such that they know I'm not standoffish.
HR kind of sets the tone for leadership and trust in the organization. Like
trust is so important.
If you want to create trust, you have to inspire it.
What I believe drives success and trust in an organization is a trusting executive team. When they communicate and trust each other, it's like mom and dad, right? If they have a good relationship, then all the kids will fall in line. But if there's infighting at the top, that's sort of like, the kids go
It's like
amok.
like wagging a long tail of people that will all fight with each other.
It comes from the CEO, right? It comes from the top down in that case. How they value the concept of trust. And if the high EQ folks who trust and create a trusting environment, transparent environment, will infuse that in the rest of the organization. I certainly see that with Nicolle, saw that absolutely at IAC or, when in my previous role, so important to success, so critical.
So shifting gears into a topic that's everywhere right now, diversity and inclusion. I was really impressed with your energy and support around D&I at your last place, IAC Applications. You have that rock star, Netta Jenkins, who's...
I worship the ground she walks on.
She's a rock star, catching the world on fire. And I just really thought, like, as a leader, you really unleashed her to use her voice, but not only within the company, but outside as an ambassador. And I'm sure that helps with recruitment. So in our current cultural climate, how does D&I shape your decisions? And how often does it come up in a given day?
Whether it comes up verbally, I haven't noticed it a ton here. It comes up most certainly in my mind as a constant, primarily because we're a predominantly white male organization, traditionally speaking, and industry is like that. And we have to make much more of a concerted effort to change that. It's certainly begun by having 4 now female executives on the team.
Yeah.
We're all white, so there's something that needs work there. But there's incredible passion here and self-motivated folks to create diversity programs. Now, one of the catch-alls, right? Everyone's calling it the big buzz around diversity and inclusion. I just want to talk to that for a second because diversity and inclusion is interpreted in most industries as a numbers game.
Quotas and
right.
D.
You don't have enough women or African Americans on your management team and your executive leadership page on your website. That's a numbers game. And I don't believe, and Netta taught me this, and I don't believe that's the way to implement the programs. It starts with what I call an inclusive mindset. If you are open to diverse opinions and thoughts different than your own, you will create an environment that embraces diverse people and they will be drawn in. So you have to start with yourselves and teaching people how to be more open and how to be more inclusive of thoughts different from their own. And the way to do that is from people who are different from you. I hope I'm saying this as eloquently as Netta would say it. She's so incredible, and I'm so proud of her. I just have like chills whenever I think of her, and I'm so proud of her. When you create that environment, as Netta would call an environment of representation, right? You will then become more attractive to diverse candidates.
Yeah.
Now you have to make effort. You have to go to diverse colleges to recruit. You have to put yourself in panels where Netta sits all the time. This work she's done externally is phenomenal. Speaking about diversity, she's become incredibly passionate and active in the media space. And that's ideal if you can get it. We have to start internally.
I hear the invitation of that, and the challenge of it is to encourage people to do what the wider culture is not doing a great job at, which is having the uncomfortable conversation or understanding how to be with people who have differing opinions versus versus shutting down and going back to your safe bubble.
Yeah.
Have you found that challenging or?
Not as of yet. Again, I think I'm a little too new having talked to everybody yet. Who knows? I haven't seen it though. I haven't seen a problem with it or a challenge with it. What's the term people are using now?
Unconscious bias.
Unconscious bias. So there's all these trainings now around unconscious bias. I think that sort of thing is helpful. I'd have to, really think about if that's what's needed here, but I haven't seen the resistance yet. So if I brought something in like that, I think you'd get an incredible turnout. People are just hungry for new and knowledge and information here. So I haven't seen the resistance, I'm happy to say.
We met at Camp Good Life Project. I would call that a high EQ environment. How do those environments where people are just so open and aware and sensitive to the needs of others influence your leadership back at the office?
Well, first, it causes me to be incredibly selective. I never have taken this job at NCC Media if I hadn't perceived a high EQ level from those I met on the executive teams. That would have been a non-starter right out of the gate. And then infusing into the organization the need to live our values and actually behave in certain, as leaders, all of us are leaders, that's the EQ piece. So if you think of my 9-box as one axis, leadership being EQ and business results being IQ, I've now put EQ on the table as a standard. That's cool to be able to do that. And
right.
I'm not alone in doing that in companies, but that's how you know you're in the right place, when you can do that and everyone's like, yeah, awesome.
This is why I think female leadership is so crucial at this point in our society, not only in business, but in the government and all places. Like, there is truth to the divine feminine energy has to rescue us from all of this thinking, doing. To me, the IQ, EQ thing, there is like a masculine, feminine thing there.
I was going to call you out on that. That's where you're going. I think that's a cop-out. I think it's a cover-up. I think that everyone has the same EQ, IQ potential. And it's a matter of being given the space to demonstrate both, because men don't respect each other when they're highly emotional, which is not the same as EQ, but that's what it sounds like to them. So it's more of an ego thing.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So
thanks for that. That's hugely powerful. Yeah. Have you ever heard the term metrosexual?
Those are high EQ guys.
Okay. Would you consider me more of a high EQ guy or a metrosexual, or do you lump those two things together?
I don't lump them together, but you are high EQ.
All right. I'm trying to transcend my toxic metrosexuality at this point.
Yeah, I don't think you're a metrosexual.
Okay.
Yeah, I associate metrosexuals with, maybe I shouldn't
lots of hair product. What do you think?
Fashion. Okay. Yeah, like high fashion need.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Like, awesome.
Yeah.
What's the opposite of that if you're a woman? Because I have no fashion sense.
Oh, come on. Come on, Deb. The CEO of Centro, where I worked for a while, he is kind of a legendary metrosexual, but he is a very woke, conscious leader, but it also manifests in his wardrobe.
Yeah. Yeah. So woke, I love that now. That's the new word, because maybe that's the cool way of saying EQ. Because woke is EQ.
Yeah.
Right?
But what I heard from you is that it's more of a state of being. It's like a practice state of being, it's like an openness, a willingness to listen.
Yeah. It's understanding that there's more to, and when you're in sales, you have to have this, right? You've got to be able to build a relationship.
Yes.
It's like the difference between a used car salesman and buying going to your realtor to buy a house. That realtor knows your family situation, what's going to make you happy in terms of your property, knows you in a very relationship oriented way. That used car salesman is trying to meet a quota. He couldn't care less about you and just wants to put you in a car whether it works or not. You have to have a high EQ. You have to be very woke to be a realtor, I would say, right?
Yeah.
And it's so to be a successful realtor.
Or a coach, hopefully.
Yeah, sure. Less about sales, though, right?
Yeah, right.
But
relationship.
Yes, to be successful in anything, I think you need high EQ. I really do, to be successful, or else I wouldn't be in this job. That's sort of at the foundation. If I don't believe that, then I'll just be a payroll and benefits administrator.
It seems like it's the work and the reward of being in your your role, to be at the table with people and to really connect with them.
Yeah. But to bring that to consciousness, right? To be the person responsible. So if you're the CFO at the table, you're constantly looking at the problem that's being discussed with a financial hat on. And you're constantly saying, well, wait a minute, that's going to blow our numbers. Or hold on, if we modeled it this way, we'd XYZ.
Yeah.
It's the same muscle, just the other side of the brain. I'm sitting there going, well, hold on a second. If you go out to the organization and say that we're going to go buy a new company, won't people be afraid that we're going to lose money and then they'll be worried about their own jobs? It's having the same mindset at the table with the other half of the brain, so to speak. Right? This isn't for every single situation, but broad sweep. If the CEO values the chief people officer as much as they value the chief financial officer, so your right hand and your left hand, you create a complete support mechanism for your CEO. If the CEO values one higher than the other, which is oftentimes I've seen the CFO, and in many cases that HR rolls up to the CFO, then all your decisions are going to be financially driven. And your people come second, and they will know that. So the CEO who has the right hand and the left hand equal parts to create the whole, I think, will be more highly successful.
Debisms. What's one insight or reflection you would offer? We'll start with your daughter starting her corporate career.
There are 3 sides to every story.
What insight would you offer an aspiring director of inclusion?
Creating the environment that embraces representation so that an inclusive mindset should be the driver, not the numbers.
How about a young, fast-moving startup CEO who wants to scale to 1,000 people?
You need a right hand and a left hand.
That's great. A coach or outside vendor consultant who wants to build relationship and trust with an established CPO.
So many things. Which one is critical?
Because you kind of have your team of Avengers at this stage of your career, you know?
How would I embrace someone new into the fold?
Yeah, or just because I feel like people overdo that a lot. I'm sure you get hammered with stuff, and there's so much out there right now.
Yeah. I do. I have my team of Avengers, but I also the network, right, is really important. It's a trusted resources that I tap my network for. So if I'm looking for a particular type of coach that I've not used before, I reach out to the network and say, who have you used that you really like? That is really saying the same thing as the relationships. So build your relationships. It's not about, here's what I have to offer you,
yes,
Mr. Coach. Here's who I am. This is my persona. This is what I bring to the table. Exactly. And that's either going to work for you or it's not. But I'm not trying to sell you someone other than who I am and how I approach things.
Oh, that's great. Last thing, in coaching, we use acknowledgement as a tool or a way to help people see themselves. I just want to thank you for being such a believer in me early on when I left the corporate world, because the projects that we worked on were so ridiculously fun and challenging as hell for me. The one that comes to mind is the Yonkers tourism video we created for recruitment up in Yonkers. Like, how do you get people to come to work up in Yonkers when they can work in the city for LinkedIn? I remember the day that I had to play you that video. You gave me so much trust. You weren't even there when we filmed it. So much creativity, so much.
I have chills.
and what I realized was that you hired me and trusted me to be myself and just ridiculously creative. That responsibility at times is hard to be with. A couple months later, when I was sitting down on a Zoom call in Northeast Ohio with you in New York with your team to sit down and watch it, I literally wanted to puke. I was so... She's a chief people officer. She is going to think this got too weird. But you laughed at all the right times. You got emotional at all the right times. And I was just, your belief in me helped me see me.
It's the same view I have of who I hire, who I work with, my team. These are the personas. You bring your person. I didn't know your work necessarily. I knew you. I got to know you. And that's good enough for me.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Covered a lot of ground. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Casey.
And thanks so much to all of you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode and you got a lot out of it, please share it with somebody who you think may benefit, or share it on social media like Facebook or LinkedIn. Pop over to iTunes and leave us a review because your feedback is so important at this early stage of our show development. And until next Thursday, glow in the dark.